Rastaban, the right eye of the Draco constellation. Let's talk about it. This star is also known as Beta Draconis. Now, Rastaban has also gone by a way in the past, however, the names were redone, so it is now formally known as Rastaban. Now, Rastaban means the head of the dragon. Some people call it the nebulous star. Some people say it means the lute player, or the menace, or even worse, who is to be destroyed. Considering it's the right eye of the Draco constellation, and the right eye is supposed to be good and the left eye is supposed to be evil, then why does it go by the names that it does? Well, to understand that, we got to talk about its influences. So let's start off by telling you guys where this star can be found. Rastaban can be found in 12 degrees of Sagittarius with an orb of 140. Rastaban is a binary star with the natures of Saturn and Mars. So let's talk about its influences. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Moon Days with Michael. I'm your host, the Royal Triangle Michael, and I am cutting out the esoteric middleman and giving you the tools you need to connect yourself right to the source. Now, Rastaban. You guys already know what the deal is with this. We're talking about the star's placement, its orb, its influences, its natures, its fortune, and giving you the general understanding of what it means to have this placed in your chart. So with that being said, we already know where Rastaban can be found, so let's talk about its influences. So with Rastaban having the natures of Saturn and Mars, this combination of natures is all about acting on the way that you see reality, actually creating and experiencing the reality that you wish to have in this realm. However, its influences seem to point in a different direction. So as we talked about with Etemen, the left eye of the Draco constellation, and it being the sort of evil one, Rastaban, therefore, you would conclude would be the good one, right? However, its influences point into a different direction. So let's talk about it. So Rastaban's influences can be very aggressive, bold, it can be quite cruel, and actually lead to a lot of loss in your life. However, before we talk about that, let's actually talk about Rastaban and its relationship to Thuban, the North Star, and Etemen, its twin, the left eye. So Rastaban, unlike Thuban and Etemen, didn't really have a lot of prominence, didn't have a lot of temples made out to it. It's not as bright as Etemen, and it's not as prominent as Thuban, with it being the North Star position. However, this star does have a strong influence, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it. It is overshadowed by Etemen since it's brighter and more prominent in the sky than Rastaban is. So, as I mentioned, it has the natures of Saturn and Mars. However, some people like to believe that this has a nature of Saturn and Venus, which would lead people to believe that it has the natures and influences of healing. However, no matter what natures you give this star still has a very tough influence. And I don't mean that this influence and this energy is hard to use, hard to understand, hard to utilize. What I mean is that no matter which way you view it, no matter what things it brings to you, it's always in a very tough and hard kind of way, very difficult to experience. I can't do this no more! And often leading you to experience a lot of hardship before you actually are able to experience pleasure. Now, this star's influence is very aggressive. It wants to help, however, it goes about it in a very aggressive and tough way, as I mentioned before. Let's look at this with it being compared to Etemen, its twin. Etemen is brighter and has a lot more prominence than Rastaban, so it's usually the influence that most people would pay more attention to, which often leads to Rastaban being overshadowed and not as prominent, and its influences being overlooked. So even though it wants to help, and even though it goes about it in a tough way, it is overshadowed by Etemen, especially since they are relatively close together. This star's influence can lead you to be becoming full of knowledge. However, with it being overshadowed by Etemen, not a lot of people use it, and not a lot of people actually realize what kind of situations that Rastaban can get you into. Even though they're tough, they can often lead you to having a lot of fortune. And even while this star can be more fortunate than Etemen, it still has a lot of negative aspects to it, being narrow-minded, being aggressive, and often can lead to a lot of loss just due to the Saturn and Mars aspect. When you have the natures of Saturn and Mars, and this is having you actually act and trying to experience the way that you see reality and your vision, with it being the eye, you can see why this influence can lead you to be a little bit narrow-minded and really just only focusing on the things that you want to experience, which can lead to a lot of loss. Usually the people that are around you, unless you're actually in a situation where you have like-minded people around you, which can be kind of hard when you're trying to experience the way that you see reality and trying to experience the things that you want to experience. It can be quite hard to actually find people who view reality the same way that you do, which leads us into the names that I mentioned before. Oftentimes, Rastaban is referred to as the one who is to be destroyed, or the menace. And this is a foreshadowing of the natures that this star can bring you, or the influences that this star can bring. Even though you may try to experience the things that you want, oftentimes this can lead people to looking at you in a very negative way, a very selfish way, a very aggressive way, and even leading to those people leaving your life, or even having you fall into experiences where you experience some kind of loss, which isn't a very pleasurable experience. So there's a balance that has to come from actually utilizing this energy. However, the important thing to keep in mind with this star and its relationship is with Etemen, and the way that you actually want to view this. So typically dragon's eyes are usually viewed as having like slits, like not like round pupils like humans. What's actually interesting is that if you were to look at this in a spiritual way, actually meditating, going viewing the Draco constellation, Etemen, if you're viewing it as the left eye of the Draco constellation, has a very bright and very sparkly eye. Looking at it is almost like it's blinding. However, Rastaban has a very dull twinkle in its eye with a very slit and narrow pupil, which is just a representation of it actually being kind of narrow-minded and very focused on its own vision. So, with all that being said, it's fortune. As I've kind of alluded to, while this can actually help you experience the reality the way that you see it, and actually helping you act and actually work towards the way that you see reality and consciously experiencing what you want, this can lead to loss, it can lead to hardship, and very painful success.
Tough.
Or if you want to view it as being a Saturn and Venus type of energy, a very tough way of healing, because it is able to see what is wrong. However, it goes about it in a very aggressive way. It's like, I don't care what's going to happen. You're going to fix this. This is how you're going to do it. It's a very tough situation to go through, right? Because nobody wants to go through a tough love situation or very painful success situation. That's not exactly what we want to experience. However, sometimes those experiences are necessary in order for you to actually carry out and do what has to get done. So, let's recap. This star, Rastaban, can be found in 12 degrees of Sagittarius with an orb of 140. It has the natures of Saturn and Mars, or Venus, depending on who you ask, and can be fortunate. However, it may lead you to experiencing a lot of loss and tough situations along the way for you to actually be able to experience what you consciously want to experience. So with that being said, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you guys want us to talk about next. Any constellation, any astrological breakdown, or anything and everything spiritual. So keep your eyes out for the next star that we're doing in the Draco constellation, Altaeus, the forgotten powerhouse of the Draco constellation. So until next time, fly high, y'all.